everyone. I'm Steven Sigmund,
And I'm Mike Messinio.
and this is the weekly movie throwdown, where each week we look at two films that have something in common and try to figure out which one is better. This week, we're going to answer a burning question. Is The Fast and the Furious just Point Break with cars? That's the general consensus, so we're going to talk through it and see if that's the case. So from 1991, it's Kathryn Bigelow's Point Break, throwing down against Rob Cohen's The Fast and the Furious from 2001. But before we get into that conversation, let's talk wins of the week. Mike, do you have anything to shout out this week?
Like you said last week, I finished watching Widow's Bay. And there's really no point in talking about Widow's Bay because everybody has already talked about it. But I finished that and I enjoyed it a lot. And I started The Bear because I want to finish that before people spoil the ending for me. So I'm trying to get through that. So that's all I've really been watching.
How far did you get in The Bear?
I'm only 2 episodes in so far.
Okay. Because I have there's a moment that I didn't recognize, but it turns out it's a nod to something else, and it's based on a film that you really enjoy from my memory. So I want to know if you catch it when it comes out. So once you get a few more episodes in, we'll talk about it. Two things for me to shout out this week. One is I went to see Carolina Caroline, which is the new film from Adam Raymeyer, who we talked about on the show because he directed Dinner in America. And this stars the star of Dinner in America, Kyle Gallner, along with Samara Weaving. And it's a little bit of a Bonnie and Clyde story set in North Carolina and South Carolina. Nothing groundbreaking with it, but I think there are some really good performances from those two. And it just has like a nice Southern feel to it. It's pretty quick. But I always forget just how awesome Kyle Gallner is. I really love that guy. I think he has such a great presence, and seeing him in this as this kind of persuasive hustler just reinforces my thoughts that he's so cool. I just love him so much. So highly recommend that. It's like incredibly limited release. I had to go into the city to see it.
I actually saw the trailer for that, and the trailer looked really good. And I did not connect. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I've forgotten. I didn't notice you directed it, so that's good to know.
When I went to Philadelphia to see a screening of Strange Darling last year, and Kyle Gallner just moved to Philadelphia, so he was there, and he started talking about this film that he was working on, and it got me really excited about it. But I kind of forgot about it because the time went by. But once I saw the trailer, it reminded me that I knew it was going to be good, and it definitely didn't disappoint. So probably a streaming thing because it's just not anywhere to be seen, or if it has been, it's gone now. But if you have a repertory theater, it might show there. Second thing I want to shout out is the Physical Media Advocate, and I'm holding it up for viewers. It's just a great magazine put out by my buddy Ryan Verrill at Antenna Releasing. It's a monthly thing, I think, maybe every other month, but it just covers physical media, release dates, great writing in it, great writing about physical media, of course, but other things too. Just anything film related. There's a great piece in the latest edition about Tony Stella, who is kind of a legendary artist. I didn't mention his passing on the show, but he died recently. He's made illustrations for Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, like all of these big films and franchises. And he does a lot of physical media art, or he did, for Arrow Video. So he passed away, and there's just a great piece in the Physical Media Advocate about him. You can get this online. You can find it in the few video stores around the country. Just a lot of fun to read. And if you're into physical media, highly, highly recommend it. I just got turned on to it recently, and I've been really enjoying it. So that's my win of the week. Let's start talking about this conversation. I'm very excited. The Point Break versus The Fast and the Furious. Let's go. Where do you lean going into this? Which one? I think I know which one because you kind of hate The Fast and the Furious.
Yes, I 100% went in thinking Point Break was an infinitely better movie than Fast and the Furious. And we had a conversation about this where I started watching Fast and the Furious movies with my kid. and I don't even remember getting through the first one completely. I just found the acting to be so wooden that I kind of just turned it off and walked away from it. But that's why this podcast is good, because we went back to it and I finally sat and watched the whole thing, and I have thoughts. So I'm actually excited to talk about it.
Oh, that's
But yes,
very
it was Point
interesting.
Break all day going in.
Yeah. And is that where you stand now before this conversation? Still Point Break?
Well, we should get to the end of it. We will say I was pleasantly surprised that Fast and the Furious was a better movie than I remembered it being.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's a nice teaser. I'm going to tell you. I mean, I said this last week, but yeah, like I'm Team Point Break all the way, and nothing's going to change my mind about that. But uh, I don't think that looking at Point Break through a critical lens, it holds up as much as it does in my heart and in my mind, much like Close Encounters is for most people, I think, in like memory. It's this beautiful thing. And this still is a beautiful thing. I absolutely love Point Break, but if I try to look at it critically, maybe not as great as I imagined. The Fast and the Furious, for the love of God, I think every aspect of that is just terrible. So it's going to be an interesting conversation that we have here today. Uh,
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Hang on. You are the one that told me that that you loved Fast and the Furious movies and that I should watch all of them.
Wait,
We had this
what?
conversation. Yes, we had this conversation in the past. So I am shocked to hear you say this.
Well, I'll tell you that perhaps in the same way that I looked at Point Break through a critical lens, looking at the Fast and the Furious through a critical lens, and you didn't even have to get that deep on breaking down the film. I mean, to me, it's a terrible script, and it's just like poorly acted. But uh, what I think is interesting about them, and I was going to talk about this later, is that they're fun. I guess, question mark. They were beloved enough to spawn 9 sequels, which in watching this one, I'm like shocked by. I cannot believe this became such a
Yeah,
franchise.
it's impossible to see where the Fast and the Furious is going to go based on this movie. And because this is, if you think about it, it's actually a nice little self-contained movie that, yes, feels a little bit like Point Break, and you're like, okay, well, this kind of works. And then, I mean, they give you the post-credits thing, and you're like, okay, maybe he's just free. And then it's impossible to realize where it's going. And that brings up what I was going to say, which is many people have told me when I said I don't want to watch Fast and the Furious, and they're like, "We'll start with 4, and the Rock shows up and it starts getting better." But what I've discovered is that now that I've watched like 4, 5, and 6, going back and watching 1 is actually kind of refreshing to watch a kind of a smaller budget can do movie that's not necessarily great but easy watch, instead of the sheer absurdity
Yeah.
that starts happening where you're like turning missiles with your bare hands and stuff. Like, it
Yeah.
becomes something that is so stupid that I don't know how
Yeah.
anyone can take it seriously. Where the first one at least feels charming. It's a weird word to use for the Fast and the Furious, but you get this feeling of like, oh, this is a nice little movie, instead of just the ridiculous stupidity of like stealing giant safes and driving through the streets, and it's a lot. It starts to become a lot. So
I think there's a modicum of realism in the original film because the director Rob Cohen openly admits to borrowing from Point Break. He talked about it with the filmmakers of Point Break, uh, said he was going to do it, and so there's no denying it. And that's why we brought it here to the show today, is because there's all of this discussion around, are they the same film? And the answer right now is yes. I mean, he's admitted that. The director and the writer have both said that they were inspired by Point Break, borrowed that structure. Now, there are a lot of flourishes in the Fast and the Furious that I think separated from Point Break, but ultimately, at their core, they're the same story. And
yeah, and
I,
because I mean, Fast and the Furious is actually based on an article from I think it was like Vibe magazine about street racing. So I mean, yeah, so it's got a little bit of a different influence from there. But yes, it's like they took that and they were like, well, how do we structure this into a 3-act movie? And someone obviously thought, well, we'll use the structure of Point Break. This will work really well if we use that. Uh, so yeah, it's pretty easy to see the similarities.
So let's talk about the original first, going in with Point Break. It's from 1991, directed by Kathryn Bigelow, and written by Rick King, who has a story credit. Also directed Prayer for the Roller Boys. I don't know if you've ever seen that, the Corey Haim film where they're like all on rollerblades.
No, I didn't see that.
Man, oh, you're not missing anything. Um, but the screenplay was by W. Peter Iliff, and what I think is interesting is that Rick King hired Iliff to write this screenplay for $6,000, and he was a full-time waiter while he wrote it. So imagine, like, waiting tables and then going home and writing Point Break. Like, in retrospect, that's probably pretty awesome. At the time, $6,000 to write a film probably isn't a lot, but that's okay. And I just want to kind of start out with Rotten Tomatoes and the budget and the box office, because I think that's indicative of what these two films are and how they differ. So Rotten Tomatoes for Point Break, 68 critics, 79 audience, $24 million budget, only made $84 million, which is not nothing. I mean, that's breaking even and then some. But in 91, it feels like this should have made a lot more money coming off of like the run that Swayze's on, the run that Keanu's on. Although it's a new kind of area for Keanu with action. It's really his first action film after, making a lot of art house stuff. So, um, what's your relationship to Point Break? Is it something you've watched a million times like me, or is it something that just kind of is in the peripheral of your consciousness?
It's probably more peripheral. If I'm going to watch a Patrick Swayze movie, I'm usually watching Roadhouse. And if I'm watching a Keanu Reeves action movie, like the first one I showed my kids was Speed. So like I lean towards those. So Point Break is something that I remember liking a lot. But truth is, before I watched it this week for the pod, I don't think I'd seen it in 20 years. So it was pretty, yeah, it was pretty exciting to go back and watch it again. Something I always think about, but hadn't really watched in a long time.
And like for me, it was a little disappointing to look at it critically, even though I've watched it probably 3 times in the last year and enjoyed it. Did Having not watched it for so long, did it still meet your expectations, or were you disappointed as well, and versus your
So
memory, like how it was?
I thought a few things. When I watched it, I thought uh that the innovations used in making it, I think it's important to kind of put that in context. Uh, a lot of like body cam work, just like the steady cam stuff, and the long sequence on the walking through the FBI building is really impressive. And obviously the foot chase scene is really something to watch. And in the skydiving, I mean, it's a feat of filmmaking, to be honest. And I think that some of the things they did for that film were invented for that movie. I mean, Bigelow had grand ideas of how she wanted to make this movie, and you can see that it feels very. It's hard to put in perspective, kind of the groundbreaking nature of some of that stuff in '91, because now we're just so used to seeing it all. But I was struck by that kind of stuff really jumped out at me.
Well, the executive producer is Big Jim Cameron,
Yeah.
so it makes
So
perfect sense that there's gonna be that film innovation there.
yeah, you
So,
think about it, they're working on that, and then
yeah.
and he's working on Terminator 2, and they come out basically at the same time. I mean, these two movies together is kind of a big leap forward in filmmaking, um, for that year. So that was my first main thought. My other two thoughts were, I think the casting was really something to see. Like, you just don't feel like if you cast this movie now or at any other time, you would be able to get this cast. I think that, again, credit to Kathryn Bigelow for casting things outside of the box. I mean, I think Lori Petty is definitely a choice that she had to fight for. She had to fight for Keanu Reeves, who no one was taking seriously at the time. And I and the thing I was struck by most is, we think of Gary Busey as an insane cartoon character now, which of course he is. But Gary Busey is actually a really good actor.
He
He is
is.
a really good. His screen presence is striking, and I really love him in this movie. Like I forgot how enjoyable Gary Busey is as an actor to watch when he's not doing reality television or insane interviews or whatever it is that he does now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he. I mean, think about this. In like 4 years, he did Lethal Weapon in '87, and then he did this in '91. And like Gary Busey, man, that guy was actually deserves a little more respect as an actor than he gets now because he's a caricature of himself.
Yeah, I guess there was like a tipping point. I don't know when it was. I haven't really thought about it, but
I don't know.
it,
I mean,
yeah,
people say that he was in a serious motorcycle accident,
yeah,
which he was technically dead for a little while. But this movie was after that. This is actually the first role that he did post accident. So clearly, he still had the chops, even though his brain wasn't fully working right. Um, I don't want to speak about someone's medical condition. I don't know how much all of this plays into it, but maybe it's possible that his brain just started to deteriorate after the accident and it took time. I don't know. But again, it just credit where credit's due. I mean, I could think of more than one role where Gary Busey is just a great screen presence, and I enjoyed watching him around this period of time.
he brings the perfect energy to this film for that Pappas role, kind of like not over the hill, but sort of elder statesman of the FBI who's just put up with so much, especially with the Harp character, John C. McGinley. Like dealing with that guy as your boss every day must be, super painful. So I think, he's great at what he's meant to bring to this. And I was trying to think of what an analog might be in The Fast and the Furious because there's not really that partner, and I guess it's Ted Levine's character in a way, the police chief.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's the closest thing.
trying to think because when you told me it's basically a remake, I was trying to do a 1-to-1 comparison, and it doesn't really work. But yeah, Ted Levine, I guess, would work, but he's not remotely as charismatic as Gary Busey. And the thing is, that's where you start to see why Point Break may or may not work a little bit better. It's a little more of an ensemble. Um, and what I find is that the character that Busey plays works great in contrast with the fact that Johnny Utah and Bodhi they're very Zen people, kind of. They're both. uh, It's just their presence is a little more laid back, and so you need someone to contrast that energy, and that is exactly what Busey is there for.
Yeah. I don't know of anybody who was in the running to be cast as the Pappas character other than Gary Busey, but I think, they made the right choice. There were a million people who were going to be Johnny Utah, of course, but, and one of them, in fact, I don't know if you know this, but this was originally Ridley Scott's film, and he did 6 months of pre-production on it, and, just had, like, his own ideas about it, and he had in mind for Johnny Utah Willem Dafoe. Can you imagine that? That makes no
Cannot.
sense. I
No.
mean, maybe in '91, but all I can see is, like, Willem Dafoe now, and it doesn't make
It's
sense to me.
possible he could have played Bodhi, eh, maybe,
Yeah,
but he's
yeah.
almost too intense even for that. But yeah, as Johnny Utah, that would be nuts.
Yeah, totally insane. Um, and Swayze was actually going in thinking he was gonna play Johnny Utah, and then they gave him the Bodhi part, and that is, like, the best move ever. I mean, you can't have him as anybody but Bodhi. I mean, that's a legendary role, especially coming off of Roadhouse, where, uh, Dalton has that sort of Zen aesthetic to him,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
it's an extension of
It
that.
definitely feels connected. So you're right. But he was coming off Ghost here. Like that's what's so crazy about it. So he was coming off the biggest role of his career in Ghost. So
And
it
in fact, he was, so the famous scene of, the chase that you talked about where they're running, it's actually not Swayze doing the running, it's his stuntman because he was in Europe promoting Ghost at the time, so he
Huh.
couldn't shoot that. But
That, by the way,
yeah.
just I had to look this up because I really wasn't sure. Yeah, that's an actual dog being thrown
Yeah.
at Keanu Reeves. That's real. That and that's the thing too. I talked about the feats of filmmaking. We've become jaded watching stuff nowadays because everything is done with effects and you can do all this cool stuff. None of that was available back then. So you're watching real surfing, whether it's stunt doubles or the actors themselves, but you're watching real surfing, you're watching real skydiving. That chase scene is 100% real. And yes, you're watching actual Rottweilers, that was a pit bull, be thrown at a human being. A dog had to be well trained and you had to make sure that everything worked. uh and that's why I love going back and watching these older movies, because whether you love them or hate them, it's important to go back and see what people had to do to make this stuff before you could just do it in post-production and fake all these things.
And I think that's, people are kind of craving that again. I think we're almost in a post effects era now because, you think about like Project Hail Mary, for example, a puppet. I mean, there's CGI in it, but they build all the sets, like that stuff. It goes a long way. And you're right. Watching something from 1991, even in contrast to the Fast and the Furious, which is 10 years later, but there's so much like CGI stuff in it with those scenes, where they press the NOS button and then it follows the gas through the car and
Yeah, we're
that
definitely going to
stuff.
have a conversation about that
Yeah.
when we talk about Fast and the Furious, so put a
Okay.
pin in that, by the way.
Yeah. Just for this one, for the original in Point Break, it's about bank robberies in Los Angeles County, and that's a real thing. I mean, I don't understand how so many robbers get away with these bank robberies, but there were like 3,000 in that county alone. Like whatever statistic Johnny Utah gives is a real statistic.
Well, hang on, the minute I heard that at Point Break, it reminded me of I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank on this. The freaking Gerard Butler movie with O'Shea.
Den of Thieves?
Den of Thieves
Yeah.
basically starts in the exact same way, where they tell you that Los Angeles is the bank robbing capital of the world. So I guess it's still the bank robbing capital of the world, even
Yeah.
like 30 years later.
I don't know why you would go anywhere else. I mean, if you want to rob a bank, go there. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's really interesting. But so that's kind of hearing that statistic. The writer of the film of the story put it together, like and he thought about it on a surfing lesson when he saw this group of guys surfing, and he's like, oh, these two things, they go together, and that's how Point Break was born. But it's what I love about these two films together is they're both set in Los Angeles, and even though it's maybe like 30 miles of distance in between the two stories, it's a real like east-west feeling to each of them. Like, I mean, this is such a like quote unquote West Coast story in that it's all set along the surf line. These guys just have that sort of like a little cartoonish surfer mentality. And the Fast and the Furious, I'm not getting into the comparison already, but that's more east side. It's all shot on the east side for the most part, and it feels more like inland than than
Yeah,
this
that's a
does.
good point.
And
You know,
and I think the energy around those things is very apparent. And there's like this extreme sports kind of feeling to Point Break that, I mean, there's car racing, which is extreme too, I guess, but there's almost like a hippie vibe of like community in this, and
you don't see a lot of
it's really
water. I
interesting.
realize you don't see a lot of water in the Fast and the Furious, do you?
The only time you see water is when Dom and Brian go to Malibu and they race a Ferrari,
Right.
and they end up at Neptune's Net eating shrimp, and that's where the Tyler character works in Point Break. So Neptune's Net is in both films, which I think is kind of fun. That's like the go-to filming spot in Malibu for restaurants. Um, but yeah, I love that sort of West Side energy of Point Break, and Keanu's a big part of that.
Yeah. Well, the other
They
thing
both,
too to remember is we're talking 91. what I had heard that they originally talking about making this movie about skateboarders instead of surfers, which is interesting. Um, so that was the original thought. But you also have to go back and realize that in '91, to the average person, I mean, surf culture was very unknown. I mean, there weren't a ton of things about surf culture. It was very much a little world unto itself. So Point Break, I mean, especially for someone like me at the time, the age that was when it came out, was my first real exposure to that level of commitment to that lifestyle and what it looked like. Now, I'm sure that, I mean, it's a bit exaggerated. I'm sure they all aren't as crazy as these guys are. Um, but yeah. Well, two of the people in the movie are actual surfers. They were professional surfers, so I guess maybe they are. But yeah, we take it for granted now that we have a much better understanding of these subcultures just because they're more ubiquitous than they used to be. But back then, Point Break was pretty eye opening about a certain group, kind of person that existed in California that I had no idea existed at all.
Feels a little bit like, and actually this was right around the same time, so it's maybe an interesting comparison, but it feels like the surf culture's been there since the 50s. I mean, that's how the lifestyle was in Southern California. And there are a lot of crazy people involved. And it's not wholly set in California, but there's a great documentary, coincidentally, by the skateboarding mogul Stacy Peralta, called Riding Giants. That's about Laird Hamilton and the surf culture in California and Hawaii. But I was thinking that, like, it reminds me of the way MTV went to Seattle in 91 and found like an entire industry of musicians making music, and like in this kind of self-contained world, it shines a spotlight on it. And that's kind of what this does with that surf culture, I think. And there's been plenty of depiction of that in film. I mean, you have like even like the beach blanket bingo stuff,
I
it's
was
always
gonna
like this
say, I
light
mean, yes, there
kind
have
of,
been beach movies made since the '50s, but that did not feel like people that really got in touch with the culture of
yeah,
of what was actually going on there.
yeah. That feels like people leaving the Warner Brothers studio and going to the beach, or maybe not even leaving the studio, maybe building a beach on the lot to depict something that's happening 20 miles away. Yeah, so that's very interesting. And that kind of tribalism is really what's at the core of this. I mean, and that's the crux for Johnny, is like, I had this thought when I was watching it, thinking about how he's a sport, like he's an athlete, and so I wonder if that team mentality is so alluring to him, of like that unit, and that's what part of what draws him into this community, like the deeper he gets into it. I don't know,
I can
there's like a
see
whole
that.
psychology to Johnny Utah that I've
Yeah,
been
I
thinking
totally
about,
see that.
but
And plus, I mean, coming from a football culture, which is very much a hyper masculine, uh, adrenaline junkie kind of uh, sport in and of itself. So you could
yeah.
totally see how Johnny would take to these guys who are jumping out of planes or searching for that rush. Because I mean, if you were going to be a professional quarterback and you lose that because of an injury, I'm sure that you will continue to try to chase something that gives you that feeling. So it seems very plausible.
Yeah, I mean, we watched the program on this
Yes, we
show,
did.
so we know we know what that community's like, and it's intense, and maybe that's part of what he was chasing. Maybe he doesn't actually want to be an FBI agent, because you see it right at the beginning when he gets the high marks, like perfect marks, I guess, in his FBI field exam, and the guy's like, "Perfect, Utah." He's so excited. He's so excited that he got it right, and that feels like a coach telling you, "Hey, good job on that pass," or something. I think I'm reading way too much into this, but it makes it an interesting perspective on it, I think. And, another thing, oh, I didn't actually mention this, but another win of the week for me is this thing called Bring Me the Beauties, which is this documentary on HBO. It's 3 parts about this cult that's based around models in the 1980s. So the leader of it, Frederick Demers, he just recruited models. And one of the guys he recruited was like the biggest, like the Cindy Crawford of male models, basically. He was like pals with Fabio, and they were like the two of them and this other guy were the three main guys. Anyway, I bring that up because this cult leader had such charisma, and I think that's what Bodhi has. I think Bodhi has that like appeal and that persuasion that a cult leader almost has, and that's what's so alluring to Johnny, that it's hard to say no to that. And you see that a little bit from Dom too in the Fast and the Furious. The Mia character says he's like gravity, or somebody says that.
No, she
Where
does. You're right.
yeah, so that's another thing they have in common is like these charismatic leaders who are so appealing and create that moral ambiguity for the narrator. And I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, that's something that's definitely a one for one in these two films. And yeah, I just find it pretty interesting. Although Lori Petty's character is like, you don't want to get involved with this guy, whereas Mia's like, come on into the family. So that's one little difference there. But um, yeah, I don't know. Kathryn Bigelow, are you a fan of hers? Do you? I mean, she's made so many good films, and people give her a bad rap for making like guy films, but I don't
Yeah,
necessarily see it that way.
I think that's a silly thing to say in the first place, because not every woman wants to make Nora Ephron movies, and not
Yeah,
and not every guy wants to make I don't know, Rob Cohen movies. It's like it's not. So I don't really
right.
understand that idea. I
Yeah.
mean, we can make any movies that we want to make. I mean, the fact that Kathryn Bigelow is interested in action and is really good at it. I mean, I don't know why that is surprising. I always found it to be kind of dumb. Like, just because you're a female, you can only direct certain kinds of movies. It's kind of ridiculous. Uh, and clearly, she is a good action director. As I said, that she came up with
I
some
think it's
ideas. I mean,
sour grapes.
right. That's probably more true than anything. But sure, I mean, she jumped out of a plane to film the skydiving scenes. It's like clearly, this is in her wheelhouse. And even someone like Lori Petty, I think that's what's great about Bigelow directing this. Because do you think that a guy director would have ever cast Lori Petty in that role? I don't think so. Because in a male mind, the female character has to look a certain way and be a certain way. But what she realized is that the female character in this role needed to be able to hang with the men to be physically up for anything. And that's what you see. And I think that that's definitely something that Bigelow probably brought. This idea that she could be tough and she could also be attractive, and those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right?
I love Kathryn Bigelow. I think her vampire film Near Dark is probably my favorite vampire film. I think it's so unique and interesting. And the Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, I really enjoy all of those. I would actually like to do those two as a throwdown on this show at some point. But uh, I don't think she's like 100% or anything, like most directors aren't. I mean, some things are better than others, but she's somebody for me who it's like an event when she releases something, the way it would be for some people with like Christopher Nolan, or I really just look forward to her making something, whether it's great or terrible. And yeah, I mean, there's that argument that she's like playing in a man's sandbox or whatever, but I like those movies, and I love seeing a female perspective on it. And whether you can call it a female perspective or not, I mean, it is. Ultimately, there's a difference in the way she directs versus the way like Rob Cohen would direct. So yeah, I'm really a fan of hers, and I think she does a great job with this film. Anything else you want to talk about with Point Break? I'm just eager to sort of talk about both of them together, but I know there's a lot to discuss with Fast and the Furious too.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things you could discuss with Point Break if you really wanted to get into the minutia of it. I will just say though, yeah, things that jumped out when in rewatch. You're right. I mean, the visuals of it really jumped out at me, but uh the some of the performances are definitely wooden. You get that when you cast actual surfers maybe instead of actors. It's hard to say. Yeah, some of it's a little bit silly. In that regard, it made me connect these two movies because yeah, the some of the acting feels similar in the way that some of it just comes off as almost comically wooden. We'll say, uh, and I think Keanu is
What
still trying to
what do you
find his tone.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. What is what's your take on his performance? Because, that's the knock against him all the time is that he's a little hollow, and I don't necessarily see that here, and maybe that's in contrast to these other, like, wooden guys. He's, like, amped up a little bit, but, I think he's, like, quite fine as Johnny Utah.
So I think he's fine as Johnny Utah. I think that when you see the growth for me from Point Break to Speed, um, I think is noticeable. He kind of brings it in just a little bit for Speed, whereas in this one, some of his line readings are a bit, uh, they're just a bit too much. Like the way he enunciates certain things, or the certain lines he delivers, you're just like, oh, that was a bit much. But it's fair. It's like this is his first step into making these kinds of films, and so I think he's trying to gauge how hot to come in with certain line readings. And don't forget, if he's acting with Gary Busey all day, I mean that's might affect how you start reading lines. So I think it's a little bit of time to calibrate. I've never really found him to be wooden. I've always liked Keanu Reeves on screen. But yeah, this one you could see there's some growing pains in him trying to come into more adult movies, him trying to be a little more grown up, but also him trying to uh, hang with all of these in this actions in this action world. So that's what I'll say.
It's an interesting year for him because he has an action film. He also has Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which is the better of the Bill and Ted's, in my opinion. And
Yeah,
he
I agree.
he, also does, or at least it's released this year, My Own Private Idaho. Those are 3 very different films,
Yeah,
and, whatever you wanna say about him as an actor, I mean, the fact that he's in those 3 films and giving 3 unique performances, which I think he does, says a lot about him. I mean, I'm with you, like, I've never really I mean, I can see why people would say that sometimes, some of the things they say about his acting, but if you just look at these 3 films, I didn't even mention Paula Abdul's Rush Rush video, which was also this year,
that's
but,
right.
those 3 films just show, like, what he can do. I think that's a great encapsulation of his ability as an actor,
Yeah.
so anybody who wants to knock on him, just watch those 3
The other
and
thing
see what he can
that
do.
the other thing I wanted to mention, that the final sequence is supposed to be in Australia, but it's actually in Oregon, is they both look very different than they do through most of the movie. I mean, this is supposed to be like 5 or 9 months later, but the reason they both look different is because this was actually a reshoot, and they went back like 6 months later to do the reshoot. So Keanu Reeves looks different because he'd grown his hair out because he was playing Bill again in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. So he was already looked that way. And Patrick Swayze has cut his hair because he moved on to his next project. And so they both end up looking completely different, which works for the scene, but it wasn't supposed to be that way. It just so happens that they had to call them back to do reshoots. So I just thought that was a fun little fact that I stumbled onto.
I didn't know that, it makes perfect sense, but in my mind, because I'm, really, like, doing a deep dive on this, I'm thinking, they've reversed haircuts. What does that say about, like, their characteristics in the film and, like, where they've gone since the action stopped? So, yeah, that's a lot of thinking I didn't have to do, I guess,
Nope.
but it's so fun
It's
to
just
ponder.
purely circumstantial. It's just happened to be how it went down.
The other thing I thought about a lot with this film is that there's the famous line, and it's something that Lara's stepbrothers say to me anytime I see them, which is "Utah, get me too."
Yeah,
When Gary Busey wants his early lunch at 10 a.m. And what I ponder is Johnny goes and orders this, places this order, 2 meatball sandwiches, a tuna on wheat, and 2 lemonades. comes in at $7.84. And I know things were cheaper in 1991 than they are now, but under $10 for 3 sandwiches and 2 drinks is insane. I don't know who wrote that, but that's the most unrealistic part of the film in my mind.
I mean, I have to imagine that after this movie, everyone was trying to find that place. The greatest deal on
Yeah.
meatball sandwiches in the world.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Just to talk about the characters a little bit. I mean, I guess we kind of did, so maybe we can just save it for the comparison. But I kind of want to talk about Bodhi's journey a little bit because I want to get your take on what makes him sort of change how he operates. Because a big thing about what was so appealing to Utah is kind of this philosophy that he has. And his actions were pretty much like stay the course, get what we need, fund our lifestyle, and then he ups the ante. Do you think that there's anything like psychological behind that, or do you think that's just a story device that's ups the stakes in the film?
Yeah. Um, I definitely think it's probably both. um, Going back and watch this
I'm
again,
asking the
I
deep
found myself
questions.
thinking, yeah, I'm like, how much thought really went into the script? I don't know. It's hard to say.
I put more thought into it than they did, I
Right. I
think.
feel like you may put more thought in than the person that wrote it. That's what I'm thinking. But yeah, I think that
Yeah, I
once
guess
he
it's just a
finds out,
device.
I think that once he finds out that Johnny was an FBI agent and he's trying to act like it doesn't really bother him, but I think deep down it really bothers him. I think it throws him off its axis. And I would say if I was trying to give the script more credit than I probably would, I think that because he feels like he missed it and he really liked this guy and brought him in, I think that it makes him question his own judgment. I think things just go sideways for him. And because he's trying to punish Johnny as well, I think he's actually trying to deepen the danger of things because he's just so angry about the situation. So that's my read on it. I don't think he's thinking all that much about. Yeah, his caution's gone out the window because he's just been thrown by the fact that he let this get past him. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. It feels like he's more of like almost like he's kind of compromised now, so he's like, "I'm just gonna burn it all down." I mean, that's kind of like a read I have on it too, where it's like, "Oh, the establishment is now coming after me, and I'm just gonna really stick it to them now." Before I was just taking money, federally insured, basically like the victim was the bank, but now I'm gonna really make them the victim. I don't know. It's it's just, an interesting upping of the ante that leads to a whole lot of death. And one of those deaths is a policeman who thinks he's going to somehow take out all of these men with shotguns in the middle of a bank. And that poor guard is like, please, I don't get paid enough for
He's like, I
this.
do not want to back you up on this, please.
Yeah.
But the crazy
Oh,
part is he almost does.
yeah.
He
I guess he
he
does.
comes
He
pretty
gets
close.
better, gets farther along than I thought he would. But it's still just not great. And then Uh, of course, Gary Busey dies, which we always knew he would. Fantastic dyer on film, Gary Busey. What a great performance dying. I was really impressed by that. Um, okay. Do you want to move on to the Fast and the Furious?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Here we go. The Fast and the Furious. This film's 10 years later, as we talked about, basically the same story, set on the East Side amongst the car culture. Uh, Directed by Rob Cohen, who also directed Daylight from our beloved
I
Sylvester
know.
Stallone,
Yeah.
and Triple X, which feels very much like like it could be one of those offshoots of the Fast and the Furious in a way. Um, Written by Ken Lee. He wrote the article that you mentioned earlier that it's based on in Vibe. And Gary Scott Thompson, who wrote Hollow Man, which is another one I'd like to do on the show, and 88 Minutes, the Al Pacino film. Also co-written by Eric Bergquist. Sorry, and his this is his only credit. So I didn't do any research on the guy, but the only thing he's ever written, maybe it was just enough for him to write the Fast and the Furious, and that was it.
What do you need to do?
Uh, yeah. Where do you go from there? I guess. So, as we mentioned, same story. Instead of robbing banks, these guys steal electronics from trucks.
Yeah.
It would,
What a wonderfully 2001 thing to have your movie hinge on, like stealing DVD players and high-end electronics. Kind of love that.
yeah. There's a great moment right at the beginning. I watched this twice actually for some reason, but I mean Laura wanted to watch it with me when I was halfway through, so I started it over. They show all of the loot in this truck, and then there's just this anonymous guy with his back to the camera who's making a phone call and is like, "Yeah, here it is. Don't incriminate me." And this guy gets like no screen time with his face, but he basically tells you the entire story in like one phone call. And I want like justice for that guy because he's such an important part of it and really gets no love. But yeah, this is the same story. You know, in Point Break, we didn't even mention this, but there's a whole subsection where they think these Nazi guys, like this group of Nazi surfers, are the villains. And one of them is Anthony Kiedis, by the way, who that would be a waste of time, is something that I say all the time in Kiedis parlance. Uh, and here it's this Johnny Tran guy who may be Yakuza. I don't know, but he's sort of the red herring for who you think the villains are. And so that's another thing that they have in common, where there's a
Sure.
whole different group of people they're focusing on.
Can
And
we just put a pin in that for 1 second while I say that
yeah,
the whole sequence where they first meet these guys, the possibly Yakuza guys, is one of the most absurd things I think I've ever watched. I just found myself laughing at it. I don't even know why. Just so much. I told you I always think about that line in Commando where they're fighting in the hotel room and Ray Don Chong is like, I just can't take all this macho bullshit. And that's
yeah,
exactly what I thought of that entire time I was watching that scene. And they leave and then they come back and they just shoot the car till it explodes. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like this whole, I don't know if I hate this or love this, but
yeah.
this is so much. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
That's really a precursor for what all of the films would be going forward. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so absurd and unnecessary, and that's really what's at the heart of the sequels to this film. And speaking of the sequels, before we really get into it, I I find it amazing that this film has become what it is. It's grown into 10 films. I was looking at the numbers for them. This one makes $206 million, and it's the lowest. Well, it's not the lowest grossing one. Tokyo Drift is, but it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it breaks $1 billion. A billion and a half dollars for Furious 7, and then 1.23 billion for the Fate of Furious. Um, it's insane to me. There's a theme park ride for it.
Right.
There's where's the Point Break theme park ride? That's a theme park I would go to. But I don't know what it is about this that just latched onto the culture. And uh, the time of this, for like its beginning in 2001, is a time when I was kind of checked out from culture musically. I mean, I still watch films, but I don't know what was popular and what wasn't for like all of the 2000s. So I guess this is just a part of like the music of the time, or I don't know. Like you're better at this than I am. What do you think it is about this in that time that makes it so appealing?
Yeah, this is making me think I'm not better at this than you because I genuinely have
Oh,
no idea. I don't. I mean, I was paying attention to culture at this time, and I didn't think this movie was particularly worth watching or that it mattered at all. and just watched it completely take off. And as far as the connection to the culture, I mean, I really don't know, because if you go back to this period of time, I mean, it was still a very pop oriented era. I mean, yes, there's the hip hop adjacent thing, and you have Ja Rule in the first movie, and there's definitely this connection between car culture in California and hip hop, but that's not a 2001 thing. I mean, that goes back to the early 90s with the West Coast hip hop and all of that. So I don't know. It's always been there in some ways, but there's nothing particular about this movie that would in my mind make it jump out into the culture in the way that it did. I'm completely baffled by it. I continue to be baffled by it the whole time. So no, I don't see any tea leaves or anything that kind of indicate. The only thing I could say is it's right before superhero movies start to take off. So and there's a bit of a lull of action movies or action franchises. Maybe people were just starving for a good action franchise. I don't know.
Here's a theory I'm putting together now because I'm the one who always has to talk about this on the show. This came out in June of 2001.
I
Is
was it was in the back of my mind. But go ahead, you can say it.
is the love of the Fast and Furious a response to 9/11? Like the community, because the central theme of this whole franchise is family and loyalty and coming together, and that's something that we saw a lot more of, at least temporarily, after 9/11. So is that what like locked this into the culture? I don't know. There's probably a thesis out there somewhere about this. I'm not, although I don't know if you'd want to write any kind of thesis on the Fast and the Furious, but uh, I don't know. That's just an interesting moment in time where perhaps this idea of family on film is so appealing that it just catches fire. Watching it now, I I do not understand that appeal whatsoever. I don't care what happened in the country. It's kind of mind-blowing to me. Um, you said you had some thoughts on this that were different than you imagined. So now's
Yeah.
the time to elaborate on that.
So like I said to you before, maybe talked about this a year ago, that I tried to watch the first Fast and the Furious, and when we got to the part where uh he goes to the racing spot and he tries to get into the race. I'm talking about Paul Walker's character, whose cop name I can't remember at the moment.
Brian
Uh,
Earl Spillner.
there you go, Brian Spillner. He says, I'll put my pink slip up. He's like, but I get the money and I get the respect. Just
Yeah.
just that line reading. He said that, and I was like, I'm out, and I just turned it off. Like in that moment, like I remember really well. I was like, I can't. Like that's one of the most
Wow.
wooden line readings I've ever heard in my life. Uh, and this was after Michelle Rodriguez's character was introduced, so I was like, this is too much wooden line reading back to back. I'm like, I can't, and I jump
Yeah.
ship.
And
But I
then put
have to
Vin
say,
Diesel.
yeah, right. But after that part, when I finally sat and watched it, like I said, I was kind of charmed by it. I thought it was a fun little movie. I really, uh, I got swept up in it. I liked it a lot more than I expected to like it. And the thing too, and we didn't mention this with Point Break. There's something not one of the knocks on Point Break is the ending sequences. There's almost like one too many. You have the ending sequence where they meet them at the plane, but they get away, and then they jump off the plane, and then they get away, and then they meet again, and it's like that last 15 minutes, you feel like some of that could be condensed. And Fast and the Furious, since we're going off the idea that it basically copied Point Break, it's about 16 minutes shorter than Point Break, and so it basically cuts the fat from what Point Break had and makes it a tighter movie, which actually makes it work a little better. It doesn't really overstay its welcome. It moves pretty fast. The ending, it really only has the one major ending, and it's out. So I came to appreciate that as I watched them back to back. So it actually put Fast and the Furious in a slightly better light for me.
Wow.
How's
It
that?
does
You
move
didn't
it does
see that
move
coming.
quickly. Yeah. because
It does.
it's cars going quickly. But um, although although that first race is supposed to be a quarter mile, which is supposed to take 10 seconds, that's the point of the 10-second car, and the screen time is like 4 minutes. So
It's the
it's
longest 10 seconds in the history of film.
yeah,
I get it. I understand that as well.
yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. I think for me, it the script, especially the dialogue, it's not even the delivery of the lines, it's the lines themselves that just kind of I mean, Laura and I both, like, laughed out loud at
Yeah.
line readings
You
multiple times.
you're totally right, because I really did think when I first watched it, like I found myself just confused by Michelle Rodriguez, and I don't mean to single her out, but I just kept thinking, like, is she a terrible actress? And now, I mean, watching it now fully from start to finish, like, I don't really think that's true. Like, how do you deliver a line like, "I think we should go upstairs and you should give me a back massage"? I don't know how you deliver that in any way that doesn't sound stupid. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not really sure if Meryl Streep could make that sound good. I don't know. So I don't really necessarily think it's her fault.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not the performances, it's the lines, and, almost everything Vin Diesel says is like that. Like, "I live my life a quarter mile at a time." That's ridiculous. Anything. And then the FBI guy who's there, "If you want time, buy the magazine." Like, I
Yeah.
mean, these are
Yeah.
just terrible, terrible lines. And it doesn't you're right, it doesn't matter who is delivering them. It's going to be, just terrible. And but I do think that the performers do a pretty solid job of working with what they have. It's not the worst film in the world, even though I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I did in the past, in the rewatch. I still think there's like a corniness to Paul Walker, but he feels like such a likable guy that I really enjoyed watching him, and I think that really works for that character. Um, are you a fan of his? Where do you stand on him?
No, no, I was not a fan of his. Not really. And this movie in some ways doesn't raise my feelings about him, but
Really?
he's fine. He's fine. Um I don't know
Yeah.
what else to say other than fine.
I mean, he's a handsome lead actor. That's pretty much
That's
uh,
true.
what you can say about him. And I would argue in this, his line deliveries maybe not even as good as Keanu's in Point Break. I mean, people like we talked about have complaints about how Keanu delivers lines, but man, Paul Walker's are almost worse. And
That's what I'm trying to say. Like it yeah.
Vin Diesel, I mean, he's going to deliver lines the way he's going to deliver lines, but I yeah, there's just so much like sort of hollowness to this, and it's actually quite interesting. It's almost like they're zombies, and Paul Walker's character is kind of this ball of energy the whole time, and everybody else is like operating at level 1 and he's at level 10. So that definitely stands out because I don't think you get that in Point Break. I mean, everybody's sort of amped up in that film because of I think that's their temperament as adrenaline junkies or police officers. And in this, you would think someone who races cars would be a little more excited all the time. I mean, uh, the opposite of that is Vince, the guy who's like a psychopath who is really chewing the scenery. So yeah, man, I don't know. There's just a
This is
lot all
another one
over
of
the
those
place
things
here.
where I just don't feel like I can put that much thought into the minutia of this because it will make my brain hurt. It's hard to know what choices people are making or why. I don't get it. But no, I would say if you're driving fast cars, you have to be calm. You have to think in a way. You have to drop your blood pressure a little bit because you're trying to take control of a machine. Okay, there's no what. So we're talking about the cars. So I need you to explain this to me because I
Yeah.
genuinely don't understand it.
Okay.
It feels like the nitrous oxide thing should be illegal. I feel like it should be an illegal thing, but it's not.
I'm pretty sure it is.
But everybody seems to know everyone else is doing it. So I don't quite understand. I
Yeah,
would feel like in the street
maybe.
racing thing, this should be illegal. But everybody does it. And they're just like out nitrous oxiding each other in the races, which I don't understand any of this. How is any of this fair? I I don't understand the rules still. I don't understand what I was watching. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what the rules are. It feels like legal doping in a sport in a way. Like it's I mean, street racing itself is illegal. So are there any rules that should bind
That's a
like
fair
the
point, but it
parameters of
seemed
it?
like the way it's discussed that it feels illegal, but everyone must know it when someone presses a button and their car shoots out like a Wile E. Coyote rocket. I mean, clearly something's going on.
Yeah.
So they know it, but no one ever complains. And they're like, well, that didn't feel right. I really don't understand. Someone needs to explain this to me.
Well, and they buy it from a store. They buy it from Harry. So it's not like it's
Exactly.
illegal to have, I guess. I don't know the parameters around this, but I know that car racing in general, I mean, that's what's really interesting about this film is like just like the surf culture in Point Break. I mean, this is a subculture that you don't really know a lot about. I mean, as a driver on roads, I see a lot of kind of like, tricked out cars. Do they race like this? I don't know, but it seems like they invest a ton of money in these cars and that lifestyle is just it defines them, like, and that's very much an East Side thing, I think. I don't know if you see people over in Santa Monica doing this. I mean, maybe you do. I'm talking out of school. I don't live in Los Angeles, but it feels like it's more of an East Side thing.
It's certainly possible. I said the whole culture thing is fine. Like I get it because even here in New York, there's certain car culture, and so you see it everywhere. It's that part I get. It's just the racing stuff that I'm confused about because I was watching it with my son, and he asked me about it, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like I don't understand what the rules are here. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm trying to figure it out. By the way, we're speaking of terrible writing and dialogue. The scene before the race, the first race, where that girl goes up to Ja Rule in his car and she's like, you get this either way. And I'm watching this with my son and I'm like, this scene is completely unnecessary. And she's like, not only is it unnecessary, it's stupid and poorly read. Again, it's just a bad sequence of dialogue, poorly delivered, and completely unnecessary to the movie. But I don't know. Sorry, I know I sound like an old man, but I just had to say it. I was like, what the? Why? Anyway.
See, I wrote down what a good situation for Ja Rule because he wins either way. Like,
but then she rejects him after the race
Yeah.
is over and he loses. So total lie. She totally lied to him.
yeah, and that's where they drop the F word, and I think he's like
Yeah.
F you, and
Right.
that felt a little out of place. I mean, that was aggressive
Yeah.
for a movie like this. Maybe that was the one F word you get,
Yeah,
in a
you get
PG-13
two.
movie.
You get two
You get
in a
two.
PG-13 movie, I believe. Yeah. But
But it
yeah,
can't be a verb. Or that was a verb, I guess. I don't know. I don't know the standards and practices, but
you know what? The rules of the F word in PG-13 are as opaque as the nitrous oxide racing in Fast and Furious. I don't know. So
open
much
secret.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so much confusion. I don't know.
The there's not as much of a familial thing in Point Break. I mean, there's this sort of tribalism, but in
I
this,
would argue, hang on, there is, I
okay,
think it's similar. I just don't
It
think
is
they say
similar.
it every 5 minutes. They're not constantly talking about their family, but they have one. It's just different. Again, the difference in the scripts. There you go. It's like you don't have to constantly tell me this. You could just show it to me, and I get it. It's fine, right?
Well, that becomes the center of the entire franchise for 10 films is family. So that's what I was going to say, is that it's very much upfront in this, and really, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of comical in a way, but it's also kind of beautiful. Like I love the idea
That is
of
true. But
this
it is more
loyalty.
family oriented too, because it's true. Even when you in Point Break, those guys, I mean, they care about each other, but for the peripheral people, I mean, even Lori Petty's character, it's like they end up using her as a pawn. It's like that's pretty dark, It just shows that within that family, I guess you can be expendable if it becomes expedient. But Vin Diesel would
Yeah.
never do that. He would never do it.
Which is ironic because, Bodhi is such a Zen guy, and I would think that kind of loyalty and like acceptance and understanding are sort of tenets of what he practices. So it makes me think he's sort of like a spiritual huckster, and just one of those guys who latches on to spirituality in like absurd ways and kind of claims it even though they're not practicing. Whereas I guess Dom, it's all about family for him, and he's loyal. Uh, Although, all the guys sort of leave him after the first race, and he's very mad about it, and like immediately accepts Brian for being loyal to him in that moment. It doesn't make sense that he would sort of discard this established family for this one guy. Uh, it it feels transactional in a way. So I don't know how much depth there is to that quote unquote family loyalty there either. Uh, it almost feels presidential at this point. Yeah. What else do you want to talk about with this? I mean, we can talk about Vin Diesel, like if we have to.
Yeah, I just
He's
if you
not.
tell if you show someone who doesn't know anything about where this is going, and you show them this movie, and you're like Paul Walker and Vin Diesel and like Michelle Rodriguez, like their careers will explode from making this movie. I just think it's completely baffling. I said it's sometimes the movie industry is completely baffling, and you catch lightning in a bottle and don't even understand it. And that is exactly what this feels like, because there's just nothing in this that makes it seem like other than like a mid-budget throwaway movie that will be fun to watch on cable every once in a while. Uh, it's impossible to see what's coming around the bend.
It really does feel like that. You're right. Like a TNT movie. This is something I would see on TNT all the time, and it doesn't feel like this is the thing that's going to launch a billion ships. Like it's quite insane, actually. And maybe that says a lot about Hollywood in the 2000s, which was kind of a time where there wasn't a lot of substance, really. It certainly, coming out of the very independent 90s where we had things like Pulp Fiction and Boogie Nights and like the rise of Miramax and New Line. Here it's kind of a time where I think the studios were trying to take things back, and whenever that happens, it's like they either try to get on board with the independent stuff and ruin it, or they just go big again, and that's kind of this maybe falls in the middle a little bit where it's a mid-budget film that they really put a lot behind, and like I said, I think the post 9/11 aspect of it really is what helps it to gain momentum, but I don't know. It's quite baffling. It feels like a mystery of Hollywood that that this, of
It
all
does.
things, is so popular.
As William Goldman always says, that no one knows anything, in Hollywood, right? And this to me is just the epitome of that. I don't think there's a single executive that would have thought that this would end up becoming a dominating franchise for the next 2 decades.
It's almost like a precursor to Marvel in a way, where it's this established franchise that gets bigger and bigger with its absurdity. Um, by the time Iron Man came out, there were 3 of these with a 4th one in the works. So it's almost like a template for what we would see going forward. And I think it's sort of, uh I mean, it's still making the most money it's gonna make in the mid 2010s, but I think it's sort of because it adapts to, like, a Marvel sort of, uh, like, discarding of realism, it just stays in the culture, and, like, there's another
Yeah,
after
but
another after
again,
another,
the
so
reason Marvel movies
it's
can do
really
that is
fascinating.
because they're superhero movies. These are just regular people that drive cars.
Yeah,
There's just
yeah.
no there's no sense to any of that.
There were a million tipping points, and I mean, not to just, like, talk about the whole franchise, but there were a million points where I'm like, "Okay, this is jump the shark." But I think the main one, yeah, and I don't remember which film it's in, but when The Rock breaks his cast off his arm by flexing his forearm muscle, and it, like, shatters and scatters across the room, I'm like, "Okay, that's enough." It's not in that film when an entire, like, parking structure falls on Dom and he gets out of it. It's The Rock breaking this cast with his arm. So, yeah, more and more absurd as we go. Um, but they do quite well. So I guess there's something to it. Anything else you want to mention specifically about this? I mean, this was a short one, but
I will just say, yeah, the drive-by shooting sequence, that was shocking to me. Yeah, it really lent some emotional gravity to the movie.
yeah, wow. Um, there are a few moments in this that don't really fit. Like a couple things that, and I guess that's on the screenplay, but like that shocking F-bomb and yeah, the drive-by shooting, although, that's kind of established that Johnny Tran is gonna use these automatic weapons when he blows up Spilner's car, but, um, yeah, and there's also a scene where Johnny Tran is the guy who is just, like, even though he's not the main villain, he's a villain, and he fills a mechanic's mouth with oil?
Yeah, that was something.
Oh god, that is terrible. Um 3 potential titles for this film before The Fast and the Furious. One is Red Line, which I get, like you red line in the car. One is Racer X, which was the name of the, article that was written that this is inspired by. It this just brings up Speed Racer for me,
I was
and
thinking the
and
same
it
thing. Yeah.
and there were actually moments during that first race with when they've, like, blurred the air going by them that felt like the Wachowski Speed Racer film to me. And the third title, the working title of it, based on, the sort of climactic moment of the film, Race Wars. This film is
Race
almost called
Wars.
Race Wars. So, yeah, somebody made a good choice there to
Not great.
swap that out.
Only thing I wanted to say was it's funny how in this movie the dumbest, most annoying character is actually right all along. The guy that starts a fight for no reason is just like a jerk the whole movie. He knew he
Yeah,
was a cop the whole time. He was right. Nobody
yeah.
believed him. It turns out the guy was right all along.
And that's a big moment where, uh, his name's Vince, and it's this one last job scenario where they're going to, which is the same in Point Break, but they're going to rob this truck this time in broad daylight, and they completely set that up by Brian telling Mia at Race Wars, like, these drivers aren't lying down anymore for these robberies, so they really just, like, overtly tell you what's about to come up. Vince gets stuck and Spilner saves him, like, something you saw coming 1,000 miles away. But, kind of a poignant moment where, maybe shows his ambiguity, I guess, to a point. My question in that moment is Spilner calls for a helicopter. They're basically in, like, the 29 Palms area, which is, I don't know, hour and a half outside of Los Angeles. And Dom and Letty wait for the helicopter to get there before they leave? I mean, they're like straight up criminals at this point. Why are they waiting for this police or ambulance helicopter to show up?
That's a good
And
point.
then they leave right away. It makes no sense.
What I would say as well is, you're saying it's about 90 minutes out. So you figure, how long does it take for a helicopter to get there? I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. It's hard. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But are they just staring at each other angrily for like 15 minutes?
Yeah,
Did
exactly.
they just cut that sequence? Because what else are they going to do? Did they have a conversation? Were they
Yeah.
just standing in different parts of that's what I want. I want to know those 15 minutes. I want to know what happened.
And where's that truck driver? He doesn't stop the truck and come back to, I
Yeah,
mean, he
that's
basically has
true.
a car like attached to his truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Decided to move on.
A lot of questions. A lot of questions. At the end of this film, you get a similar thing. You mentioned the post-credit scene, which I forgot about, and I didn't see it, so you can tell me what it is. But before the credits roll, you get kind of a similar thing to Point Break. In Point Break, Johnny lets Bodhi basically choose his own fate, and he goes out into the ocean. He's not coming back. And here, Brian just commits to Dom, basically. I mean, he lets him get away. There's no chance of him being apprehended. So that's a big difference, I think, in that Brian is like in now. It feels like he's committed. I don't remember what happens in the second one, if he's still a cop or not, but I would imagine there are a lot of questions to be answered if he is.
Yeah.
What's the post-credit scene?
I don't think I'm trying to remember if I even watched the second one. I think I skipped it and went right to like the fourth one, because that's what I was told was where you should go. So I don't think I definitely didn't watch Tokyo Drift. I don't know.
That's the worst one.
The ending sequence, the post credit sequence is just Dom driving. He's like in Mexico, and I think that's where he is. Yeah, it just shows him driving. So we know that he got away and he's somewhere else. That's all. Nothing crazy.
Well, that makes sense that he would go to Mexico, because he's apparently like some sort of Corona influencer. But
Right.
You can have any beer you want as long as it's Corona. Jesus Christ. Okay. Well, why don't? Oh, by the way, I should mention, I don't know if you know this, but this year, I mean, you obviously know this, you can do math, but it's the 25th anniversary of this film.
Oh, I just saw the trailer for the 25th anniversary re-release of Fast and the Furious. Oh, I saw it.
Okay.
So
it back in theaters. It's coming in July. Yeah. Get ready. Are you going to go see it? Big screen? 4DX?
No.
I only knew about it because I don't even know if I told you this, but I got a job writing where I review movie posters. Basically, I do movie poster roundups every month, and the poster for the 4DX version of the Fast and the Furious re-release is stunning. It's really, really good. It looks like Grand Theft Auto, and it's really, really cool. So if not for that, I mean, we didn't plan around this or anything. I just didn't know that, but I don't know. Maybe I'll go see it. I doubt it. All right, well, then let's do a head-to-head comparison of these. I think this is where it's going to get good. Here we go. Head-to-head comparison. Okay. We've talked about the story being similar. So my question is, which one does that story better, in your opinion?
Wow. So this is much tougher than I expected. As I said, I felt like Fast and the Furious, because it cut out some extraneous stuff. It's a bit of a tighter movie, moves a little faster, feels quicker. Whereas Point Break, and even I'd say, but even some of the action sequences, like they're a while. Like they're, I mean, the chase sequence, the skydiving sequence, like these sequences go on for a while. But at the end of the day, yeah, Fast and the Furious is a stupidly written movie. I don't know what else to say. It's just, I mean, be harsh about it, but yeah, I mean, Point Break is no, it's no Butch Cassidy or The Sting or anything, but it's better. So I'm gonna have to go Point Break.
Yeah, I hated the Fast and the Furious, basically. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. Actually, maybe I didn't hate it. Maybe I'm like on the fence about it, but the script is just not great. It doesn't. It iterates on the original in ways that are interesting, but not very well. So I think for all its flaws that I've kind of noticed this time in watching Point Break, I agree. It's the original, you know, like and anything that comes after it is either going to be better or it's going to do a poor job of you know, trying to interpret the original and
Yeah,
make
we
the
didn't even
original look better.
mention the sequel, the remake of Point Break that came out in what, like 2015?
But that's by design. We don't mention that.
Yeah, I completely forgot that even existed. Like, what are
Yeah,
you even thinking with that? Like, that is just sacrilege. Anyway,
it really is. I feel the same way about Roadhouse, you know, but that seemed to be okay. There's a sequel to the remake of Roadhouse coming out, so clearly I'm in the wrong there. There actually was a sequel to the original Point Break written, like the script was written and it was planned for 1993, but the studio scrapped it for whatever reason. Maybe it didn't make enough money. I don't know, but so there was an intention to do that. That's kind of a time when sequels were very prominent, so it makes sense. Um, just think if Point Break had 9 sequels, what a different world we would live in.
I know, but well, you'd have to somehow convince yourself that Bodhi survived in that surf, which would be something.
He did paddle to New Zealand. Yeah.
He had a
uh,
submarine hidden at the bottom of the ocean the whole time. He knew that they were coming after him, so it was just in case.
yeah. Oh, that's a good one. You should be writing this new sequel. Uh, that feels like a Fast and Furious plot point. Like
No,
this
that's not even
for a
true. In Fast
sequel.
and the Furious, he would have a scuba mask and one of those little things you put in your mouth, and he would just swim all the way to New Zealand just because he can. Like
Yeah.
that's yeah.
No, he would have a scuba mask and he would swim like a mile and then he would have an underwater car he would drive.
See, I was gonna say that he had nitrous oxide strapped to his own back and just pressed it and just shot there like the Swiss Army man, like that thing. Like it'd be like that. He just
Yeah.
rode it to New Zealand. That's what I was thinking.
This stuff writes itself. I mean, there's so when you throw reality out the window, I mean, you can literally write anything. It sounds
And they
pretty
did.
appealing, actually.
Fast and the Furious. They did actually do that. So yeah.
Yeah. um, let's talk about characters. Who do you think? Which one has the better characters, in your opinion?
Man, so just going off the first movie of what we see in the very first Fast and the Furious, not since then. So for this is a standalone movie alone. Yeah, my feeling is that you get a lot more of the characterization in Point Break than you do in Fast and the Furious. They keep things pretty, you get some basic parameters of who these people are in the Fast and the Furious. And you get Vin Diesel's speech, sure, but you don't really know anything about Spillman, honestly, and everyone else you barely know. So the only person you really learn anything about is Vin Diesel's character. But in Point Break, you get a pretty good understanding of the main characters, I would say. I'm trying to take this as seriously as possible. You do. You get
Yeah.
their backstories. You get
Yeah.
to know them a little more. The characters a little more drawn. So I think Point Break.
There were some issues with the Writers Guild on Point Break, and credits couldn't be given out, but uh, maybe a pass was done by Jim Cameron and another one by Kathryn Bigelow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, solid screenwriters, right? And they know how to develop characters. They know how to make them more interesting. And yeah, I'm completely with you. I felt like zero attachment to anybody in the Fast and the Furious, but
Right. And so again,
Point
it
Break,
just
I'm
keep coming
in.
back. I know you keep beating a dead horse, but it's like, yeah, I felt no connection to any of these people. The thought that this would just go on and on and on, where it's like they didn't even draw the characters well enough that I cared about them in the movie I was watching. Again, it's really, really amazing. But yeah, sorry, I'm gonna keep beating a dead horse. Yeah.
It's hard to almost separate this film from its place in the franchise and everything that came after it, because when I think about the characters, it's hard not to think about The Rock or Gal Gadot or, like, all the people who came into it and, like, the absurdity of those. It all kind of becomes one film for me, so it's hard to sort of separate it, but in just watching this one, yeah, there really, just wasn't anything to it. Uh, Whereas in Point Break, I even like Pappas, I'm into Pappas. I know his backstory for the most part. He gives you all kinds of details, and he's even in the moment, these are all characters who are making interesting choices, and there's just a depth to it that I don't think is there for the Fast and the Furious, and that could be probably across the board with these categories. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go Point Break with characters too. Tone and consistency is an interesting one because I don't know
It
that either of
is.
these do those
Uh,
things well.
they don't. I have to say, I think Fast and the Furious might actually win toning consistency because, I mean, there's not much going on. Honestly, it's pretty straightforward thing. I mean, it's punctuated by some ridiculous explosions and. I mean, I said the shooting up of the car thing just feels like it comes out of nowhere. But other than that, it's a pretty. I don't want to use the word tight. I mean, I guess it is though. It's a tightly constructed, uh, A to B movie. So yeah, tone and consistency. I mean, Point Break, just the fact that you have Gary Busey at all alone blows up your tone and consistency. That's just a given. So I'm gonna have to go Fast and the Furious on this one.
Man, you're kind of convincing me now. I was thinking Point Break, even though and that's a script thing too. I mean, is that the one part of the Fast and the Furious where the script got it right in establishing that tone? It might be because
It could be. It'd be one
Point
of the few
Break
things
is a
they got right.
little,
Yeah, Point Break's a little
yeah,
bloated. It's a little all over the place because you're mixing. I mean, even the fact that you're mixing the FBI culture with the surfing culture, and this is done deliberately. Obviously, again, when we talk about this, the tone having losing on tone and consistency isn't necessarily a negative. I mean, sometimes your movie having a movie all over the place is actually what makes it enjoyable, and I would argue Point Break has that in some ways. But yeah, Fast and Furious is a pretty consistent movie. I have to give it to him.
yeah, I think you're right. I uh I wrestle with it. I mean, there's a lot more of the police side of it being shown in Point Break, I think, than the Fast and the Furious. Maybe because they don't have a Gary Busey, they have Ted Levine, and you don't wanna, like, put a lot of effort into establishing him. I mean, no shade on Ted Levine, I love that guy, I think he's the best, but, um, there's just not even in the raid that they do, which they copy from Point Break, there's it's like a montage, I think, and it's so quick, and it just there's such a smaller percentage of the film that's police oriented, so, I mean, it really develops Spilner in Dom's world more, and you can kinda see where his loyalties will lie in the end, but, yeah, I mean, I think that makes it consistent too. I mean, there's the racing, but it really isn't. I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you. Fast and the Furious wins this one. This one, I haven't really thought about how to answer this one yet. Cultural staying power and iconic scenes, because I don't know. They both have their place.
Yeah,
What do you think?
this is the first time where we've come against two movies that are both pretty high in the culture in some ways. But I have to say, the fact that Fast and the Furious is an ongoing it's an ongoing thing. You know what I mean? I mean they're still making these movies. I mean it's a continuous thing. It's hard not to say that Fast and the Furious has more cultural staying power. And the thing with Point Break too, I mean, there's certain people, I mean, Keanu Reeves fans, Patrick Swayze fans, certain kinds of people, Gary Busey fans, they kind of love Point Break. but it's hard to know how much in the
Gary
larger
Busey fans.
culture. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary Busey fans. I don't know how many of them there are out there.
I'm one. Check me off,
Um,
Gary Busey fan. But
okay.
yeah,
Uh,
it's hard to know how much larger the footprint of Point Break spreads out.
Yeah. I mean, you would think it's a slam dunk for the Fast and the Furious, and maybe it is, but in my mind, I'm thinking about it as like when I think of this franchise, I don't think about the first one all that much. I think about how big it's become and like the spectacle of The Rock and Statham being involved and because there's so many, I think all of them draw a little bit of like the 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 staying power away from the first one, and they almost like usurp it in its place in the culture. But I mean, there's no denying that it spawned all of this. So that in and of itself is a huge deal. Um, it also wouldn't exist without Point Break. So I think there's something to be said for that too, in that, it's the OG. When in my personal life, I'm quoting Point Break all the time. I'm sending gifs to people all the time of like Swayze, like and Keanu giving like the bro handshake in the air and uh so in my own life there's a lot of Point Break.
Right.
But I don't yeah. I mean it's a pre-internet film, so that might be part of it too. As we learned in The Fast and the Furious in 2001, you can find anything about anybody on the web, according to Dom, which feels like a complete misnomer to me because it's 2001. But with that in place, I think that really helped to launch The Fast and the Furious. So as much as I don't want to admit it, I'm gonna have to say that The Fast and the Furious really has the most cultural staying power. To my
Yeah.
chagrin, I
I'm
would really love to
I know,
to
again, I'm
for that to
surprised
be
as
Point Break.
anybody, but it is what it is.
All right. Well, let's you and I see eye to eye on this all the way through, which is great. Let's move on to our 5 questions to see if we can get any more insight into where we're going to land here. All right, 5 questions. Which film is more rewatchable?
Point Break. It's not even debatable.
Yeah. For a second, I thought if Furious is on TNT, like you said, I'd watch it, and because it does move quicker, even if I'm going to sit down, one determining factor for me is that I always try to imagine if I would buy it on physical media. I do own Point Break, and I thought to myself, should I buy The Fast and the Furious? And ultimately landed on no. So the fact that I wouldn't buy it because I don't want to own it tells me a lot about how I land on it. Uh, would you want to hang out with anybody from these films?
Oh man. I wow. I mean, I wouldn't mind hanging out with Papas and eating meatball sandwiches. I mean, that's
I knew it.
that would be pretty
I knew
good.
it.
Yeah, that would be all right. I don't know if I want to hang out with Bodhi. He's starting to
Yeah.
be a little too much for me. And everyone in the Fast and the Furious. I don't know. I don't want to have a conversation with those people. So yeah, I'm hanging out with Papas. That's the only
Yeah,
person.
I'm with you.
Maybe that speaks to how
Pappas.
old we are. That Papas is the only person that we feel like hanging out with. Maybe that says a lot about me, I guess.
Well, I would want to hang out with Johnny too. I think I would like to do
Yeah,
that.
I guess.
I might even hang out with Bodhi, I have to say. I like Bodhi, even though he goes dark. I'm
I mean, in
into
theory, I
his
like Bodhi,
vibe.
but I can't hang with that guy. I can't. I won't be able to. I won't be able to hang with him. That'd be too much for me.
You want to hang out with Anthony Kiedis' character?
No.
Fun fact about him, which I didn't mention, is that they had to do fight choreography training on the weekends in the lead up to this for like a month or two. And he was the only actor who didn't show up. and that's why he basically gets knocked out by one punch in the beach fight scene because he didn't learn any of the choreography. Okay, is this a career peak or valley for anybody involved?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about this. So with Point Break, I don't know if it's a career peak, but it is. As I said, it is really important for Keanu Reeves. I mean, because it does two things. I mean, it shows that he can play football, which probably leads to him getting the replacements, and obviously his direct, jump from this to speed. If Kathryn Bigelow hadn't shown what he can do, I mean, there's no possible way he gets speed, and his whole career is different. So it's a really big deal for him. Um, I could argue for you and me, it's almost a career peak for Patrick Swayze, but I mean, Roadhouse still feels like our favorite Patrick Swayze movie. Um,
Yeah.
so it's hard to say in Point Break if it's honestly a career peak for anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
What about Fast and the Furious? I think there are a few there.
I would argue that Fast and the Furious is the career peak for Rob Cohen
Yeah.
because if you look at it, I mean, again, he made Daylight in '96. He makes this in 2001. But after Fast and Furious, I mean, one, I'm actually not sure why he doesn't come back to direct any of the other movies. I don't know how we know what happens there. Um, but if you look at the movies he makes after Fast and the Furious, I mean, I know you might have a soft spot for Triple X, maybe I don't. So I
I
feel
don't.
like,
No.
yeah, it's just diminishing returns from this point on, which is surprising to me because you would think that he would have more standing to make stronger movies after the Fast and the Furious success. So I kind of want to do a dive into Rob Cohen now and figure out what happened. But yeah, I would argue it probably is his career peak.
Yeah, it's an interesting time for him. I mean, uh, who knows? It really set him up, to do other things. And maybe the choices he made after that, not so great. But uh, I almost think it has to be, if not a career peak, like the beginning of the climb up that mountain for everybody involved in the Fast and the Furious, as far as like Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, and Jordana Brewster. I mean, they really, much like a Marvel franchise or something. I mean, they have to commit like 10 years of their lives to this, and it's uh, just such a huge thing that they must really be A, making a ton of money, but B, getting a lot of other offers for different kinds of things because of it, because of the heat they have. So that makes sense. Um, it's gotta be a career high for Ja Rule, right? I mean, he's in the movie and he's on like 7 songs on the soundtrack. Is it gonna get any better for him than
You know
this?
what? You're right. I'm gonna give you that one. Career peak for Ja Rule. You got it.
All right. Now, if Spielberg had to direct one of these films, which one should he do?
Oh man, this is harder than I would have thought.
Yeah.
So he's a California person. So I mean,
Yeah.
maybe he has a connection to surfing culture. Um,
Or car
I'm gonna have to
racing.
say I'm gonna have to say Fast and the Furious because he made what's a Duel. So
Yeah.
he's already done a car movie. So I think it has to be Fast and the Furious.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the action in Point Break feels a little bit like Minority Report or something to me. Like I know he can do action in a way. Maybe it's a little too edgy. I couldn't imagine Point Break without the kind of edge that it has. And I know he's not going to bring that. Whereas with the Fast and the Furious, there's like no edge to that. I mean, it
No,
really
you're right.
feels like his wheelhouse. So yeah, I mean that makes sense. It's all about family. It's about like found family after a broken
Yep.
family. So uh yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I think Spielberg for sure should direct The Fast and the Furious. Last one. Would either film be better if you swapped lead actors?
Uh, I mean, you could technically swap lead actors in these two movies. I mean, could you see Paul Walker and Vin Diesel in a remake of Point Break? I mean, you possibly could. Would you like it? I don't know if you would, But you could definitely see it. I can see it right now thinking about it.
Not better.
But not necessarily better. And if you flip it the other way around, I mean, I would love to see Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves in Fast and the Furious. I think it would be fun.
I think it would make it better, actually. Those two in the Fast and the Furious, because it's almost like reprising the roles from Point Break, essentially, and doing the same film. So I was gonna say I can't imagine Vin Diesel surfing, but then I remembered there's a scene in Triple X where he rides like a silver serving tray down a handrail like a skateboard, and so I know he has the balance. So maybe it's not as far fetched as I imagined. Uh, okay, those are
Just one quick note, something I
yeah.
forgot to mention for Point Break. So what's cool about that too is it turns out that Swayze and Keanu Reeves both took something from the movies that Reeves hadn't really surfed before, and he became, uh, like an avid surfer after making Point Break, and Swayze became a huge skydiving person after Point Break. I mean, you know the story that he actually fought to actually do his own skydiving in the movie. They let him do one jump at the end, which they end up using. But yeah, so they both end up taking hobbies from that movie, which is pretty cool.
He was
Side note,
apparently good.
well, I was going to
I
say
was
the other
just
thing I didn't know. Michelle Rodriguez did not have a driver's license and had to learn how to drive to make Fast and the Furious, which I also think is pretty fascinating.
same with Jordana Brewster. She didn't have one either. So I guess you know, that's a good skill to learn and they pay for it. I was going to say that Patrick Swayze was so adamant apparently about skydiving, even though in his autobiography he says his brother was a skydiver and that he wasn't into it before the film. But he became so enamored with it that he just wouldn't shut up about it apparently, and he finally convinced Gary Busey to go skydiving with him after they wrapped shooting. So just seeing Gary Busey in the air, I wish they would have filmed that. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I would have paid to see that.
All right, let's move on to our audience polling for the week. This is where we take results from our social media polls. Follow us at Movie Throwdown Pod on all of the social media platforms and give us your opinion every week. We post a poll for you can tell us which film you think is better. Where do you think the polling landed this week?
I think it's landing on Fast and the Furious. I think that the social medias will definitely have a bias towards the Fast and the Furious franchise. That's just what my gut's telling me.
That's what I thought as well, but I was surprised. At 22-10, Point Break, which is shocking.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, the audience finally voted with us for once, and it feels good, and it's actually quite shocking. A pre-internet film did better on the internet than The Fast and the Furious, so that's
Nice.
kind of amazing. All right, so we've talked through it. You didn't tip your hand at the beginning. I said Point Break was my winner, and it still is. I wasn't argued out of it, although you did make me think a little more about The Fast and the Furious, but ultimately, I think, there's no question that Point Break is the better film. I mean, as I said, without it, you wouldn't have The Fast and the Furious. So it gets points for that, and it's just more compelling with better, more interesting actors to me. Why don't you reveal to us what you think?
Yeah, I was surprised that I ended up liking Fast and the Furious more than I expected because I expected to completely hate it, and I thought it was a perfectly fine movie to watch. Other than some scenes other than some Ja Rule scenes which could have been removed, but other than that, it wasn't terrible. But yeah, Point Break is still a lot more fun to watch, and honestly, it's the movie I watched a second time as opposed to Fast and Furious, which I did not. So that tells me everything I need to know.
Yeah, I mean, as we discussed, better story, better characters. I mean, they kind of split with that tone and consistency and cultural influence going to Fast and Furious, but the things that matter in the filmmaking, you know, it just seems far above the Fast and the Furious. So Happy to say that this week our winner is Kathryn Bigelow's Point Break. Very, very excited about that. Um, that's it for this episode. Next week, 4th of July weekend, we're going to record this. Very excited about this too. We're going to do our first ever movie draft. Are you looking forward to that? Are you nervous? What do you think?
This is my first draft, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, mine too. What we're going to talk about is, we're heading into July, trying to keep it light. And so we thought we would we're going to draft summer blockbusters, but only from the 20th century. We're starting with Jaws, 1975 to 2000. We're going to take the highest grossing film between May and the beginning of September from each year. And we're going to draft in a handful of categories. Helping us do it is our friend of the show and my wife, author Laura Carney, and another friend of the show, filmmaker Garrett Gooch, who's been on a few episodes, always on our summer blockbuster episodes. He pointed out to me like Terminator 2 and I can't remember what the other one was that he was on for, but yeah, it was another summer blockbuster. So he is our resident expert on summer blockbusters, I guess, and very excited to have him and Laura. So join us next week for that. And in the meantime, check us out on social media and vote for your winner. Well, I guess there won't be a poll this week, but in future episodes, vote for your winner. We're at Movie Throwdown Pod on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. You can follow us at Movie Throwdown on Letterboxd. And that's it. Join us next week for our 20th century summer blockbuster draft. We will see you then. So long.